Welcome to another video on AZ104 exam prep. In this video, I'm going to talk about the differences between IP Flow Verify and NSG Diagnostics in Azure Network Watcher. As I can see, there are three main differences that you need to know. IP Flow Verify supports only TCP and UDP protocols, whereas NSG Diagnostics support ICMP protocol as well. So that's the first main difference. The second difference is that although both IP Flow Verify and NSG Diagnostics help evaluate how the security rules are processed for an Azure resource, with IP Flow Verify, you can only check for a particular virtual machine. Whereas with NSG Diagnostics, you can check how the security rules are processed for a virtual machine, NIC, application gateway, and the network interface of VMSS. So NSG Diagnostics provides additional support for other Azure resources as well. To understand the third main difference between these two network watcher tools, I set up my lab environment by creating these Azure resources. I highly recommend you to follow me by just running these commands, and the link to this file I am going to give it on the description. So open your PowerShell, just copy these commands and run these commands. You will have the same environment that I have. So this is the simple architecture of the Azure resources that will be deployed when you run those commands. So in this architecture, we have a virtual network and two subnets, subnet 01 and subnet 02. In subnet 01, I have a virtual machine which is connected to a NIC. But subnet 01, or rather the virtual machine VM01, does not have any network security group attached to it. In subnet 02, I have VM02 connected to NIC 02, but the subnet 02 is associated with an NSG called subnet NSG, and the NIC of VM02 is also attached to another NSG called NIC NSG. So to verify that, in VM01, I do not have any rules to display because, as I told you, there is no NSG attached to either the subnet or the NIC of VM01. Whereas with VM02, I have security rules. The first set of rules come from the subnet NSG, and the second set of rules come from the NIC of VM02. So the NSG that's attached to the subnet, they contain only the default security rules, and the NIC of VM02 also has default rules, but I have created one additional rule. And before proceeding, we also need to understand how the NSG rules will be processed when any communication comes from VM01 to VM02. Suppose VM01 is trying to communicate to VM02. What happens is, first, the security rules in the NSG associated to the subnet will be processed. If none of the rules deny the packet, only then the security rules in the NSG attached to the NIC will be processed. Only if none of the rules deny the packet in both the NSG will the communication happen from VM01 to VM02. If the rules are denied by this NSG attached to the subnet, the packet will not even reach this NSG which is attached to the NIC. If a packet is allowed by the NSG attached to the subnet, but if it is denied by the NSG attached to the NIC, still the packet will not be able to reach VM02. So with this understanding of how the NSG rules are processed, you can go to Network Watcher and check IP Flow Verify and NSG Diagnostics to learn about the third difference between these two Network Watcher tools. Before even telling what is the difference, I'm going to directly show you what the results produced by these two different tools look like. So to check the connection from VM01 to VM02, I'm going to use virtual machine VM02 and the network interface. The protocol will be TCP. And since I'm going to check the connection from VM01 to VM02, the direction will be inbound. the local port will be 3389. The remote IP address will be the IP address of VM01, which is 10014, and you can select any remote port. That doesn't matter. So click verify IP flow. As expected, the traffic is denied. So IP flow verify tells you which particular NSG has denied the traffic and which security rule denied the traffic, and the result, which is access denied. So when the communication comes from VM01 to VM02, and since the NSG that is associated with the subnet contains only the default security rules, there is nothing to prevent the connection from going forward. Now, next comes NIC NSG. Here, we had created a custom rule that specifically denies the RDP connection, and at this level, the connection is denied from VM01. But with IP flow verify, you do not get the entire picture. By that I mean, if a VM has multiple NSGs, then IP flow verify displays only the first NSG and the security rule that denied the traffic if the traffic is denied, and IP flow verify displays only the last NSG and the security rule that allowed the traffic if the traffic is allowed. What if you need to see how the packet is processed by each NSG attached to the VM? For that, you can use NSG Diagnostics. So first, let's run the test, and you should be able to easily understand what I'm trying to tell here. The target resource will again be VM02. The protocol is TCP, and since the target is VM02, it's going to be an inbound connection. The source IP is the IP of VM01, the destination IP is the IP of VM02, and the port is 3389. So if you run the NSG diagnostic, you still get the result if the packet is allowed or denied, but you also get how the traffic is processed by the NSG at each level. That is, how the traffic is first processed by the NSG that's associated with the subnet, and how the traffic is processed by the NSG that is associated with the NIC of VM02. As I told you, first, the security rules in the NSG attached to the VM's subnet will be processed. There is nothing that's denying the connection. So the default security rule allow VNet inbound allows the connection. And after it allows, the security rules in the NSG attached to the VM's NIC will be processed. Now, since we had created a custom rule that specifically denies this connection will be denied. So that's the difference between IP flow verify and NSG diagnostics. Although they may look very similar, you need to remember these three differences for the exam. The third difference is very important, that NSG diagnostics help you to understand a complete picture of how the traffic will be processed at each level if the VM has multiple NSG attached at different levels. Even with connection troubleshoot, you can use one of the diagnostic tests as NSG diagnostic. So here let's do it again. The source will be VM01 and the destination will be VM02. The preferred IP version IPv4, destination port 3389, source port can be anything. And diagnostic test, as I told you, I'm only selecting NSG diagnostic. So connection troubleshoot internally runs NSG diagnostic, and they are going to give you the same result as NSG diagnostic, which means even with connection troubleshoot, you should be able to see how the traffic is processed by the NSGs at each level. So first, subnet NSG, the traffic is allowed. Next, NIC NSG, the traffic is denied. You also get the rules that allowed the traffic and which denied the traffic. So hope it is clear about the differences between the different network watcher tools.